Ilara had always found comfort in the broken things of the world. As an antiques restorer, she saw the beauty in cracks and the history in decay. So when she stumbled upon the ornate, dark-surfaced mirror in a forgotten corner of a dusty shop, she felt an instant connection. It was beautiful, yes, but more than that, it felt knowing. She paid the shopkeeper, a man whose eyes never quite met hers, and brought the mirror home, placing it in the heart of her cozy, cluttered apartment. For the first few days, it was just another piece in her collection, a silent, elegant presence. But then, the small things began. A book she was certain she'd left on the coffee table appeared back on the shelf. The pattern on her favorite mug seemed to shift just for a second. She dismissed it all as fatigue, the product of long hours hunched over delicate porcelain and aging wood. Her work was demanding, her mind often playing tricks on her. Then she noticed her reflection. It started subtly, a slight delay in its movement, a shadow in her eyes that wasn't there a moment before. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, she stood before it, her face a mask of exhaustion. She didn't smile. But in the dark glass, the corner of her reflection's mouth twitched upwards, just for a heartbeat. A cold dread, slick and oily, seeped into her bones. This wasn't fatigue, this was something else. The apartment, once her sanctuary, began to feel alien. The familiar clutter became a maze of disorienting objects. The warm, soft lighting she loved now cast long, menacing shadows that seemed to writhe and stretch when she wasn't looking directly at them. The air grew heavy, thick with an unspoken presence. Everything took on a strange, sepia-toned hue, as if she were living inside a decaying photograph. The world outside her windows seemed distant, muffled, as if the apartment itself had become a sealed tomb. She started researching, her fingers flying across the keyboard late into the night. Fueled by black coffee and mounting paranoia, she scoured ancient texts, online forums for occult enthusiasts, and forgotten folklore archives. The keywords were always the same: dark mirror, shifting reflection, stolen identity. And finally, she found it, a name whispered across centuries, a legend told to frighten children and warn the unwary, the observer. An entity that didn't just haunt, it consumed. It would latch onto a host, feeding on their sanity, their memories, their very sense of self, until nothing was left but an empty shell. A puppet for the thing in the glass. The mirror wasn't a window. It was a mouth, and it was getting ready to feast. The psychological warfare intensified. The whispers started faint at first, like the rustle of leaves, but growing clearer. They sounded like her own voice, distorted, echoing her deepest insecurities. "You're all alone, Ilara. No one would believe you. Are you even sure what's real anymore?" Friends would call, but their voices sounded distant and strange. Texts would appear on her phone, messages she never sent. The observer was isolating her, cutting her off from the world, making her doubt her own mind. The reflection was no longer just mimicking her with a delay. It was moving on its own now, its eyes following her around the room, its expression a permanent, knowing smirk. It was a constant, silent mockery. Ilara knew she couldn't live like this. The entity was growing stronger, its influence bleeding further into her reality. She had to destroy the mirror, but the lure was specific and terrifying. To destroy the prison, one had to look at the prisoner. The moment of its destruction was when it was most powerful, capable of leaping from the shattered glass into the soul of whoever met its gaze. How could she break it without looking? How could she fight an enemy that wore her own face? Panic gave way to resolve. She wasn't just anyone. She was a restorer. She knew materials. She knew their properties, their strengths, their weaknesses. Her workshop, a place of careful creation, would become an arsenal. She found what she needed: 2 parts of a quick-setting, industrial-grade resin. Once mixed, it would become a solid, opaque block in minutes, a tomb of its own. Her plan was desperate, a frantic gamble born from sleepless nights and sheer terror. The final confrontation felt like a fever dream. Her apartment was barely recognizable, the air thick and humming with malevolent energy. As she prepared the resin, her reflection moved with a sudden, violent purpose. It raised its hand, a mirror image of her own, and slammed its fist against the glass from the inside. Cracks spider-webbed across the surface, but the mirror didn't break. The observer was trying to shatter its own prison to force her to look. It was goading her, taunting her with the one thing she couldn't do. "Not on your terms," she whispered, her voice raw. She grabbed a heavy scarf, blindfolding herself tightly, plunging her world into darkness. This was her domain now, the world of touch, of sound, of instinct. She could hear the faint, frantic tapping of her reflection on the glass. She took a deep breath, picturing the room in her mind, her years of navigating its familiar clutter guiding her. Grasping a heavy bronze candlestick, she swung with all her might. The sound was an explosion of crystalline agony. 1,000 tiny shards of glass sprayed across the floor. At the exact same moment, a psychic scream ripped through her mind, a soundless shriek of pure rage and ancient hunger that threatened to tear her sanity apart. She stumbled, her ears ringing, but she didn't stop. Still blindfolded, she dropped to her knees, frantically mixing the 2 parts of the resin. Her hands worked with the muscle memory of her craft. She poured the viscous liquid over the pile of broken glass, her movements swift and precise. She had to seal it, every last piece. As the resin began to harden, the oppressive atmosphere in the room vanished in an instant. The unnatural warmth dissipated, the menacing shadows receded, the psychic scream faded to a dull echo. Trembling, she pulled off the blindfold. Her apartment was just her apartment again, messy, cozy, and blessedly normal. On the floor lay a newly formed, cloudy block, the shattered pieces of the mirror suspended within it like insects in amber. It was done. She stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. A sense of profound relief washed over her. It was over. But as she stood up, she saw something pulse in the corner of her vision. Back in the living room, a faint, rhythmic light was emanating from deep within the resin block. A slow, steady heartbeat of light. A cold knot of fear tightened in her stomach. She turned away, forcing herself to look at her own face in the clean, untainted reflection of her bedroom window. Her expression was her own, tired, terrified, but hers. And then, just for a second, so slight she almost missed it, the corner of her lip pulled up into a faint, knowing smirk. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We'll see ya in the next one.